All right, you ready? What's Kai?
Eddie.
Well, your video's gone, Kai.
Okay, let's do this.
There we go. All right. Robots versus humans.
The book.
In the year 3050, in an underground civilization, Gary, an average underdweller, was sitting planning on how he was going to make his people's triumphant return to the surface and destroy the robot army and their fearsome leader, World King. 10 years earlier, Gary was the assistant to the famous crazy scientist they called Professor King. One day, the professor got a call from the president of the world saying that himself and 5 of his top decision makers and important people have been infected with this new virus. And he was looking for a cure. Professor King got to work right away on a cure, and within a week, he called the president back to let him know that he had found a quick fix and to meet him at his workshop in one day.
Here's where the robots come to play.
When the top of the tops arrived, they found 6 metal suits that Professor King told them will keep him healthy until they find a real cure. They got in the suits and something strange happened. They could no longer control their limbs. The robot suit had taken over and were carrying out their programmed task: raise up a robot army and destroy all humans. This is when Gary and the underdwellers moved below the surface. Back in 3050, Gary had been racking his brain to think of how he could get to the top, outdoors, and live like people are meant to live. He suddenly remembered those experiments he did with Professor King on fruit, and how that turned out. And he thought,
There's an idea, but how do I find him?
he was looking for the one they call apple. He's one among many fruits that the professor experimented on, resulting in a charming, witty, adventurous apple, who, through his charm and wit, convinced all the other mutated fruit to join him and live underground with the others. Gary asked everyone,
Bill, how do you know where I could find Apple?
No, I don't know where he is.
said Bill, and he continued wrapping a fly.
What about you, Felix?
Oh, yes, said Felix. Right there.
Felix pointed to the guy standing next to Gary. Apple was sly and would sneak up on people.
Yelled the surprised Gary. Apple, we need your help. We would like you to join with your mutated fruit army to defeat World King and his robot army.
Ah, yes, good old
yes.
Professor King.
Yes, good old Professor King.
He's been busy, hasn't he?
He's been busy, hasn't
said Apple.
he?
What? I'm talking about World King, not the professor.
Gary said, slightly
confused.
They're one and the same, my friend.
They're the same, my friend.
Professor King made those robot suits as a sneaky plan.
Professor King made those robot suits for a sneaky plan.
To take over the world.
To take over the world.
You know, like a crazy scientist.
You know, like a crazy scientist.
Explained Apple.
Explained
What?
Apple.
I thought they just shared the same last name. Actually, now that I think about it, he does look exactly the same, but no lab coat and different hair.
Gary was weirded out, but still needed to figure out how to stop the man he'd worked for many years.
So how do we stop the man I worked for many years?
He thought. It's simple, said Apple.
It's simple, said Apple.
We just need to get his sword.
We just need to get his sword.
You see, he discovered a cure and has kept it in his gem.
You see, in his sword, he has a. In his sword, he has. Okay, can you please say that again?
We just need to get his sword.
Okay, we just need to get his sword.
You see, he discovered a cure
You see, he discovered a cure
and has kept it in a gem in his sword for all these years.
that he has kept any sword for all these years.
Bit of a weirdo, if you ask me.
Bit of a weirdo, if you ask me.
Get the sword, we rule the robots.
Get the sword, we rule the robots.
It's really quite simple.
It's really quite simple.
How do you know all this?
Gary asked. I heard it when I was sitting in a fruit bowl
Well, I heard it when I was sitting in the fruit bowl
in the professor's kitchen,
in the professor's kitchen.
explained Apple. There was an awkward silence for a bit, and then Apple said, me and my army will help.
Me and my army will help.
The two shook hands and came up with a plan. 3 days later, they put it into action. The army came to the surface through the sewers and appeared near the World King headquarters. They saw 6 robot guards around the outside that were pretty easy to get around. Apple just yelled out, I hear there was a human 3 blocks over.
I hear there was a human 3 blocks over.
The robots ran off to go and catch it, leaving the crew to slip into the headquarters. Inside was very simple. There was a big area with one door, and guarding that door was the Wormulator, an accident that was created when a worm snuck into an experiment on a wood chipper. Apple's army used its pear tanks and banana guns to create distractions to let Gary and Apple slip past and enter the door where they found World King. Ah, look who it is. Gary, it's been a long time. 10 years since I fooled everyone and took over the world.
10 years is long enough, Professor. It's time to make this all stop and let us be people again.
Demanded Gary. Ha! You think you'll stop me? In order to do so, you will need my... As World King reached for his sword, he quickly realized that it was not where he left it. This sword
was stolen by Apple.
who snuck around and grabbed it when World King was talking to Apple.
Apple.
Apple, you fruit! I knew I should have stewed you when I had the chance. Apple raised his sword and all the robots ceased destroying. Apple ordered them to take World King and launch him into the sun, then restore the city. It took a few years, but once the city was rebuilt, Apple and Gary released the 6 from their robot suits and gave them the cure for their sickness. And the humans and fruit families returned to the surface to live out their days in peace. The end.
Did you like the story, Mom?